Wonder if I can sort of see more clearly
And
with
we are
glasses.
live. So this is our today's live stream, Ask Karen. My special guest today is Erica Brown. So what we do twice a week, I get a chance to interview the members of my group, because sometimes the title coach, consultant, therapist, healer doesn't really explain exactly what they do. So they get a chance to share with you what they do and to ask a question relating to how they can build their business, get more clients, etc. So, Erica, if you'd like to share with the listeners a little bit about who you are, what you do, who you help.
Yes, hello there, everybody. Okay, basically, I do a blend, which is actually quite unique, of coaching and counseling with the addition of energy psychology and metaphysics. And because I have a background in alternative and complementary therapies, I can bring in all sorts of other things whenever it's required to best help that person that I'm talking with at that particular time. That's it in
Perfect.
a nutshell.
So you've got many tools in your toolbox.
I have.
So who do you help? Who is your sort of your typical client?
Typically, at the moment, I'm seeing more of people, particularly women, of a certain age group, 50s, that sort of thing, maybe a little bit more than that sometimes, particularly people who have gone through loss of some kind, whether that's divorce, separation, loss of a job, loss of a pet, loss of a home. Loss can come in so many different flavors and colors and textures. And typically I'm finding that these are people who've lost their way a little bit, maybe, who are finding themselves a little bit stuck. Sometimes they're the empty nesters who are wondering, now what do I do with my life? How can I actually open up and expand the rest of my life? Because the last thing any of us want to be doing is stagnating. You know, we want the ease, we want the joy, we want the fun, we want the connection with people. And if people are still working, maybe they want to expand their career potential. If they're in a profession, maybe, or they're running their own business, they're wanting to see those horizons broaden.
Right. Okay. And so how long have you been doing this, and what's your story? How did you end up on this path?
Oh my goodness. I actually began by using alternative and complementary therapies. And that started because, well, it's a lifelong interest of being a healer right from when I was a child. But I was more or less forced into going down that path when I had a supposedly life-limiting illness some 40, 50 years ago. And started then to sort of actually study the things that were helping me, and then started to pass those on to other people. And was teaching in the community from about the early 1980s, and helped a number of people on their path to become practitioners in their own right in their chosen therapies.
Wow.
And one of the things that I found, a number of the people who came to me from those classes wanted more of the talking therapies. They wanted counseling, they wanted coaching. And I more or less drifted into that role, and then did some official training about 20 years ago. I was in one of the first cohorts that did any training in this country for coaching. And subsequently, I incorporated the counseling training that I'd already done. And here we are today.
There we go. You've got your own method, and it sounds very bespoke so that it just fits the individual person that is in front of you, which is so important because there's not one size fits all. We are all human beings and we're all different, right?
Absolutely.
So it sounds like you, again, as so many coaches and therapists end up doing, that you chose to take responsibility for your own health, and you were searching out other ways. And because that happened, it's now your mission to help others that are in the same boat.
Absolutely.
Is that a fair
Absolutely, yes. And if that's going to help them to get rid of some limiting beliefs along the way so that they can feel more at ease in themselves, but then
Wonderful.
so much the better. Yes.
Wonderful. So if that resonates with you, if you'd like to get in touch with Erica Brown at listeningheart.co.uk. So Erica, do you have a question for me relating to, obviously, all other coaches and therapists? Everybody wants to expand their audience and have more clients. So do you have any specific question?
Well, I've actually got a couple of questions, which might be a little bit cheeky, but they do sort of link, actually, in my mind at least. One of the questions that I have is, does one really need to have a website these days? Or can one just stay using the social media platforms?
Great question. And okay, I'm going to tell you from my perspective, my personal opinion. So I'm sure, you might get different answers from different people. I would say yes. And the reason I would say yes is that you have no control over the social media platforms. Now, it could instantly go tomorrow. They could change the rules and they could say, right, no alternative therapists or alternative healers are allowed to advertise, market, share content, do anything tomorrow. And then what would you do? If you'd spent a long time building up your clientele, growing your audience, building influence within your audience, constantly posting and building your leads, I suppose, your potential customers, and then all of a sudden overnight that is gone, what do you do? So at least my recommendation would be, the difference is, even if you don't have a website, some way of collecting people's details, some kind of autoresponder or email list, excuse me, because you will have control over that and nobody can take that from you. So you would have a way of getting in touch with people. Now, obviously, due to GDPR, there are certain rules around keeping a list. So you have got to check with believe it's the ICO, because you do need to, explain how are you storing these details, what details precisely are you storing, are you keeping hold of, and obviously you need their permission, which is why, yes, it's going to be essential to maybe give a PDF file or an ebook or an infographic or something, so that people then can input their name and email, and you've got to explain the reasons why you want this, and they've got to be able to okay it. So yes, I would definitely say email list. I know that was a bit off tangent because you asked about website. But yes, again, website for the same reason, because it allows you to put out there a little bit more about you. It's a little bit more of added verification that you are a real person, you are a real business. Because then you've got opportunities to put an about section, a little bit more about who you are, maybe your qualifications and things like this. It's putting you out up there as a professional in your field. If we rely solely on social media, we're giving our power away. So that's my thoughts on that. Did you have another question?
Well, I think you've answered it, actually, because I was going to go on to ask that if one was relying on social media, is there one platform that would be more reliable to use than any of the others?
Well, and again, this is probably going to be a preference, big personal preference, because again, I'm sure if you ask 10 different coaches, you may get 10 different answers. The way I still see things is, yes, LinkedIn is perceived to be the more professional social media platform. However, my thoughts on that is, yeah, they might be on LinkedIn, but they're still on Facebook too. So, the trouble is, when people start, they feel that they've got to be on everywhere. And I am a huge advocate for omnipresence, being absolutely everywhere. It's almost like a bit of a fight these days for attention, almost, it's like, hello, because everybody, we're all scrolling. There's so much going on, and there are so many different social media platforms. But at the end of the day, Facebook do seem to have it all summed up, and everybody will be on Facebook, and it's a lot easier to find your perfect customer, your ideal customer. Whereas with things like LinkedIn, you've got to reach out. You can only promote within your network. You've got to reach out to people, and if they're not, that well, LinkedIn show you whether they're on your first, your second, your third. It's a little bit harder. So again, that's a bit wishy-washy, isn't it? It is horses for courses. There are lots of different social media platforms, but no, I would go with Facebook. Pretty much everybody is going to be at least on Facebook, and the others would be second and third. So a bit wishy-washy. I go off on a tangent sometimes, but does that
answer your question? It's still useful. Thank you.
Awesome. Okay. Well, thank you for that. Thank you for your question. Thank you for sharing what you do and who you're about. Because
my pleasure. Thank you for inviting me. Thank you.
No problem at all.
Thank you, everybody.
Anybody else wants to be interviewed, obviously get in touch. But otherwise, I will be back next week with Ask Karen. Bye for now.